One of my most popular videos on our YouTube channel is the grass-fed gardens, how to build great soil and reduce weeds by using layers of bulk materials in your garden. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. I want to answer some of the questions that have come up with that particular video that has gone quite viral. It's got thousands and thousands of views, far more views than we have subscribers. But here's the thing. The gist of the video is that you can feed your garden grass and other biomass in order to build great soil and reduce weeds. The reason this works is because weeds require sunlight and warmth in order to sprout. And often when we have bare soil gardens, these weeds can just go wild. But when we do such as the roost out method, which is layers of straw, or we use a grass-fed method, which is layers of long-cut grass, you can block the sun from the surface of the soil and give priority to your plant starts. Now, a garden like this, you're not going to be able to broadcast seeds because, again, you have a thick layer of mulch at the top of the bed. Now, some problems can happen. Trish writes in asking about doing this and having lots of mold and mildew under the grass layer and whether that was a problem or not. Well, if you layer long cut grass on the permanent raised garden beds, you will have enough airflow that you shouldn't have mold or mildew or anything like that. However, if you lay grass clippings, which are cut much smaller on your beds, you'll definitely have problems. The difference is the grass-fed system is layers of straw and long-cut grass and other things that kind of give you a fluffy layer of protection over the bed. So the mulch, instead of being compacted, like mulch in a walkway, which would be more carbonous material, the mulch is very loose. And actually, you can even just stick your hand in there and pull the mulch apart to put in a new plant start. But if you're getting mold and mildew, that means that the grass is too thick. It's too heavy. It hasn't been allowed to get the airflow that it needs. Now, one of the things we talk about is if you have a pile of long-cut grass or a couple bales of straw, you're going to spread all of the straw you have over all the beds you have because we're not looking for thick layers every time. So let's say you have a layer of 4 to 5 inches of straw. You don't need that deep of a layer initially. But that kind of layer will block the weeds. But again, if it's all matted down, then it'll just get moldy and mildewy because of an anaerobic breakdown of materials rather than an aerobic breakdown. What's the difference? Anaerobic means without oxygen. We need the oxygen interacting with the soil surface, but through a layer of high humidity. Not moisture, but high humidity. And the loose straw on top of the bed will trap moisture in the form of humidity rather than liquid water. If you have liquid water, it pushes away the oxygen, and ultimately you end up with the anaerobic without oxygen rather than the aerobic with oxygen. And the aerobic environment, you're going to get microbes and enzymes that will break down the material into soil, where the without oxygen, you're just going to get a mess. You're going to get mildew, mold, stuff like that. It's going to be pretty nasty. So again, we're layering in the materials loosely, and we're layering them in at the end of the fall, for example. If you're chop and dropping your crop residue, we're layering them in the growing season when we have grass that we've allowed to grow longer. And one of the benefits, by the way, letting the grass grow longer and then cutting it with a scythe, and I'm talking about hip-high grass. I'm talking about grass that could be chest high. When you do that, you don't only have grass you can layer on your garden bed, but you also have fodder that you could be feeding animals. Now, if you don't have animals, you could feed the garden directly. But if you do have animals, this goes to another question. You could actually feed the animals, gain a protein source, and then use the manures from the animals in order to feed the garden. So a lot of folks were asking, look, if I've got animals, why would I want to put valuable grass on the garden when I could feed the animals with it? And you're absolutely right. You want to use that long cut grass to feed the animals, but there will be time where the grass is too thick and too just maybe browned towards the fall, you can use it as bedding and then clean that bedding out and put it on the garden bed itself. Now, again, the garden bed manures are going to be without oxygen. So you want to make sure those manures get turned a few times to start the composting cycle and then layer on the bed as a top dressing. Now, a lot of folks ask about the Diana here, for example. Once the grass is laid down, how long before it's ready to plant? As soon as you lay the grass down, you can plant in it. We layer our beds 3 or 4 times a year, depending on what's available as far as resources are concerned. We do layer in at times leaves that fell off of trees. But again, we're not looking for thick layers that are going to block the airflow. We're looking for layers that are thick and fluffy and allow that airflow. Now, it's going to mat down over time as the materials break down. But as soon as you lay those materials out, you can spread the materials away, make a little pocket in the materials, and then just put your plant start right in, and you're ready to go. The grass will break down much faster with garden plants growing in there, but it's important not to have the mulch touch the plant. So you want to have kind of a pocket in the mulch, put your plant in, connect it with soil, water it in really well, and then just let that plant grow. That plant will grow while the mulch is actually getting broken down into the garden bed and becoming soil. And that whole cycle is going to boost the amount of micronutrients available, the amount of enzymes and microbes that are available to interchange with the plant, and ultimately give you a more thorough growth in your garden area. Now, another question I get here is, did I cut the grass with a scythe? So again, I'm talking about grass that's growing up hip high, chest high. Yes, I come through with a scythe and cut it. Again, you could cut it with a string trimmer. You could cut it with a sickle bar, like a sickle bar mower. I use a scythe because it makes no noise. I can go out there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, which rarely happens. I usually get up 6 or 7 or something. But I can put music on and I can cut that grass with the scythe. It's really quiet. Nobody has to hear any noises. I'm not using any fossil fuels. And then I rake up, fork the grass, take it over to the garden bed, and lay it out on the beds right away. Now, if I already had plants on the beds, is it okay to take that grass and go ahead and just compost it? Yeah, it's certainly okay. And when I'm talking about grass growing hip high and chest high, I'm talking about grass that doesn't go to seed until it's very long, because we do not want to be introducing grass seed to our garden. So we're going to cut with a scythe before the grass goes to seed, but the grass is long enough that when we lay it on the bed, it actually creates layers. We don't want to lay it on the bed and then block out the oxygen. We're not trying to weed kill the bed by suffocation. What we're doing is we're reducing the amount of light those weeds get. And then if any weeds do sprout in the future, the top of the bed has a layer of grass that we can just, basically mulch material, that we could just, the weed just comes out. The weed doesn't really get good soil contact. Now, again, like I said in the beginning, this isn't going to be something you're going to throw seeds in. And actually, even seed balls don't work very well, because the small plant will have too many light obstructions in order to really get going. So what will happen is, a lot of times if weeds sprout, they'll dry out, because once they get above the surface, they don't have a lot of roots to do anything, and they just dry out in the surface. The same thing will happen if you introduce brassica seeds or lettuce seeds. They just won't grow. But if you, again, make a little pocket in the mulch and you put in a plant start, that plant has such a benefit in the fact that its leaves can do the photosynthesis and its roots retain some level of moisture. They will outcompete any weed that could be in there, any grass that might be in there, grass seed, and you're going to have a much easier to maintain garden. In fact, if you do this with permanent raised beds, you will find yourself feeding your garden with grass more and more often. Now, again, the shortcut grass is going to go in your compost pile. It's going to get turned. It's going to get turned into compost. And you can just top dress that compost right on top of the straw that we're talking about. But if it's long cut, more straw-like, then you can shake it out over top of your garden beds and give it a cover, a top dress, or mulch around certain plants, or maybe you're doing a potato tower and you're going to build that potato tower up in your garden and then just knock it over into the garden and use it as cover. But again, there's no tilling required. There's no weeding because the weeds just can't grow. And there's very little maintenance effort because the mulch basically provides a blanket over those beds and keeps that soil moist, keeps that soil strong, keeps that soil at the right temperature, even in hot, sweltering days, at the right temperature so that your plants get the maximum growth. When it comes to fruiting, by the way, if you've got viney vegetables with all this mulch on top of the beds, when you have pumpkins or different things like that, they can just lay on top of the mulch. It's a wonderful system. And again, if you have questions about this or anything else we're covering, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. And our goal is to help you grow more food at home so that you can have food security and that you can have a home that is also physically secure. And these things provide you convenience and lifestyle. And a garden, if you don't already have a garden, it's probably the most beneficial thing you can do with your lawn ever. It requires very little inputs, and when it does have inputs, those inputs can come from from your property itself, and it creates an abundance of food. There's no wasted energy when you're investing in a garden, especially a garden in your own yard. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. You can write with your questions at www.prosperityhomestead.org. I'm here to help homeowners transform their property into an oasis of both food and physical security. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Justin Hitt.